Welcome back student. We are studying carbon and we are studying carbon in series of lectures. My dear student, we have completed few lectures on carbon. In this lecture, we have studied some definitions which are related to carbon. My dear student, today we are going to again take some information regarding carbon. We are also going to study some upgraded definitions which we have already studied. Especially today we are going to consider carbon from standard 9th. So let's study carbon. First, we will try to recall all the things which we have studied regarding carbon. My dear student, we are not in a hurry. We will study carbon in details. In my every lecture, first we will have the revision of whatever we have studied in the last lecture, and then again we will study some information which is given in the higher classes. So, all the lectures will be a revision and also study of higher classes. So, my dear student, let's consider some points which we have studied in our previous lecture. Let's recall our knowledge regarding carbon. My dear student, the first point we studied about carbon is carbon is denoted by the capital letter C. The atomic number of carbon is 6. The electronic configuration of carbon is 2, 4. The number of valence electrons in carbon is 4. The number of valence electron means the electrons which are present in the outermost orbit. The electronic configuration itself tells us about the number of valence electron in carbon. Fifth, the valency of carbon is 4. My dear student, in order to complete its octet, carbon needs 4 electrons and therefore the valency of carbon is 4. the number of protons in carbon is 6. Therefore, the number of electrons in carbon is also 6. The neutrons in carbon is 6. Ninth one. Therefore, the atomic mass number of carbon is 12. My dear student, carbon has 6 proton. Carbon has 6 neutron in its nucleus, and the sum of number of proton and neutron present in the nucleus of an atom is called as atomic mass number. Therefore, the atomic mass number of carbon is given 12, and it is the sum of total of protons and neutrons present in the nucleus of carbon. So, this is the basic information, my dear student, which we have gathered. Now, number 10. Here, my dear student, we are going to study the 10th property of carbon, and that we are going to study from 9th standard. Before that, my dear student, in 7th standard we have studied the definition of element, and now in 12th standard, when you are studying carbon, slowly what happened, the definition will go on changing and there will be upgradation of the definition. So, I will write a definition which we have taken from the 7th standard and then change the same definition and upgrade that definition according to 9th standard. Element. My dear student, we have studied this definition in 7th standard. So, I will first write the definition which is given in 7th standard book regarding element. Carbon is also an element, and therefore we have to study the definition of element also. The substance which is made up of one and only one kind of atom is called element. My dear student, in 7th standard we were studying elements, and we were studying all the elements, and therefore definition which was taught in 7th standard is regarding elements. The substance which is made up of one and only one kind of atom is called as element. But now, my dear student, when we are in 9th standard, the properties of the element are increasing, and therefore in 9th standard we are going to study chemical reactions, and in this chemical reaction elements take part. The elements combine to form compound, and therefore now we are going to study the definition of element in respect to chemical reaction, and this is the definition of element which is upgraded according to 9th standard. According to 9th standard, a substance which cannot be broken into simple substance by any chemical reaction is called an element. My dear student, when we are in 7th standard, we studied the substance which is made up of one and only one kind of atom is called as element. We also studied what is monoatomic element and diatomic element. But when you go in 7th standard, the element is considered regarding taking part in chemical reaction, and therefore on the basis of chemical reaction and chemical properties, the upgraded definition of element we get in 9th standard. According to this definition, a substance which cannot be broken into simple substance by any chemical reaction is called as element. And in 9th standard, for this lecture, we have taken this definition. Element is classified into 3 types. Elements are classified into 3 types: metal, non-metal, and metalloids. My dear student, when we consider the definition of element in standard 7th, we studied element, and we have studied element in 2 types: monoatomic element, diatomic element. Now this definition is upgraded in 9th standard, because as you go in higher classes, the elements and their chemical properties you will study, and when you study the chemical properties, then you will see this element taking part in chemical reaction, and therefore the elements, their types and their properties are very important for all of us to know, and therefore according to ninth standard, the definition of element is given in consideration of chemical reaction and chemical properties. What does it tell? A substance which cannot be broken to simple substance by any chemical reaction. It tells us that a substance cannot be broken into any simpler form, or a substance which cannot be broken to simple substance by any chemical reaction is called as element. And we know that in 8th standard elements are classified into three types: metal, non-metals and metalloids. From here we will pick up one property of carbon and include it in our knowledge. That is, carbon is a non-metallic element. So my dear student, I wanted to introduce one more property of carbon, that carbon is a non-metallic element. But directly saying this to you, I have again arranged the syllabus in such a way that we will again have a revision of element from 7th standard and also from higher classes. And from higher classes information in 9th standard, while we are studying carbon as important element, it is told that carbon is not metallic element. My dear student, now we will consider the definition of compound as well, because when you grow up you will study chemical reaction. An element combined to form a compound. What is the information given in our book regarding compound, and what information we can take from the definition of compound and include in our knowledge of carbon? Let's find out. Now my dear student, the definition of compound in 7th standard and 9th standard is the same, and therefore I will write it and explain you. What is the definition of compound? The substance formed by the chemical combination of two or more elements in a fixed ratio is called compound. What is the definition? The substance formed by the chemical combination of two or more elements in a fixed ratio is called compound. When you consider a compound, it is formed by chemical reaction, and when a substance is formed by chemical reaction in a fixed proportion, then that substance is called as compound. My dear student, carbon is also available in the form of compound, and therefore we have studied the definition of compound in our lecture today. Compounds are found, compounds are found in plants and animals. My dear student, compounds are found in plants and animals. They are also found in minerals. My dear student, when we study compound, we have to keep one thing in mind. That is, compound is found in plants and animals, and compound is also found in minerals. The compounds found in plants and animals. My dear student, the compound which is found in plants and animals are called as the compounds found in plants and animals are called as organic compound. Whereas the compound found in minerals are called inorganic compounds. So my dear student, in today's lecture we have studied some definition of element and carbon which were there in 7th standard. We also studied the upgradation of the definition which is given in 9th standard. While studying the definition of element in respect to chemical reaction, we have considered certain points. We have also studied compound and the definition of the compound with respect to chemical reaction. We have seen that whenever there is a chemical reaction and when a new substance is formed by a chemical reaction from two or more elements in a fixed ratio, we called it as a compound. My dear student, compound is found in plants and animals. Compound is also found in minerals. The compound which is found in plants and animals is said to be organic compounds, and the compounds which are found in minerals are said to be inorganic compounds. My dear student, while learning the definition of element, we have seen that element is classified into three types, that is metal, non-metal and metalloids. From this information, one more information about carbon is given in 9th standard, and that information we have taken in today's lecture, that is carbon is non-metallic element. My dear student, directly I have to write all the properties to teach you, but I did not do it in that way. We have studied properties of carbon from physical to chemical, and the upgraded knowledge which we get in higher classes, we are accordingly bringing it in our lectures. So my dear student, our lectures will be very useful for you, and you will develop good knowledge through my lecture. My dear student, I am writing all these things for you so that you also practice writing. My dear student, again some properties and structure we will study.